Hello friends, so I welcome you in the lecture 4 of inflation series. So till now we have covered the meaning of inflation, causes of inflation and the types of inflation. Now we will discuss the impacts of inflation. So the impact can be negative, positive. The impact can be on external sector, government sector, social sector. It can be on different stakeholders. So as I have already given you the hint, now I am giving you 30 seconds to think the different impacts that inflation can have. So 30 seconds start now. Okay, so now I will discuss the different impacts of the inflation. So first let us categorize the impacts of inflation into two broad categories, the positive and the negative impacts. So first, the positive impact. So just consider that prices are rising and you know that they will keep rising. So what will be your action? So the action of a common person will be to spend the money and buy as much as goods as soon as possible, so that in the future the person don't need to pay extra amount to buy the same goods. So increasing prices encourages the people to spend more, encourage spending, right? So this spending, this increases the demand of the goods, and when the demands of the goods increases, further the production of the goods increases, right? The production of the goods increases, the jobs increases, and the unemployment reduces, right? So increase in the inflation has an impact, positive impact upon the unemployment. The unemployment decreases, and this aspect is called Phillips curve. Phillips curve, we will discuss the Phillips curve in the later part of the discussion in detail. So you have to just consider that it encourages spending, that ultimately reduces the unemployment, and when the production is increasing, that means the economic growth also increases. So a certain basic minimum level of inflation is positive, it is desirable. So we discussed in the when we were discussing the types of inflation, that creeping inflation is desirable, that is safe and essential limit of the inflation. So this safe and essential limit is very positive, it is desirable. The inflation can also be positive for the people who are owners of property, real estate. So consider the situation in India till 2016. Till 2016, whosoever was having any piece of real estate, maybe housing, shop, a plot of land, that person was happy because the prices were increasing. The land has limited supply, but the demand was increasing because of increasing income of the people and because of increasing population in the country. So the point is that the people who are having the ownership of property, they are happy. So this is the positive aspect. Now coming to the negative aspect. So if we see the negative aspect on different sectors. So if we see the different sectors, first external sector. In the external sector, first in the trade. So impact upon exports and impact upon imports. So what is the impact upon the exports? Exports will increase or decrease? it is very obvious the exports will decrease, because when the prices are increasing in the domestic country, the product of domestic country, the product of India will become less competitive in the external market. So the buyer will tend to buy the other country's product more than the India's product. So exports will decrease. Imports will decrease or increase? Imports will increase. Why? Because the buyer in India get more encouragement to buy the cheap products from outside India. For example, in India, the mobile handsets are imported from China, because in India the cost of production is high, the prices are high, and the price in China is very, very cheap. So these imports become high, exports become low. This is the trade impact. So ultimately there is trade deficit, and because of this trade deficit there is balance of payment deficit, which is not good for the country. The second impact in the external sector is upon the exchange rate. So as far as exchange rate is concerned, exchange rate is decided with the interplay of demand and supply forces. So when the demand of foreign currency is high because of this high imports, then the value of foreign currency increases as compared to the value of Indian rupee. So the value of Indian rupee declines, and this is called depreciation. So there is rupee depreciation or decrease in the value of Indian rupee. Because of this depreciation, there is adverse impact upon the various stakeholders, right? So this is the impact upon the exchange rate. Now coming to the second aspect, that is the impact upon the government. So when there is inflation, the government will try to support the people in the lower economic category. The government will give more subsidy for the food, for the energy, and for other products. So it will increase the revenue deficit, which will ultimately increase the fiscal deficit, and there is adverse impact of the fiscal deficit, that in fiscal deficit further impacts the future generations, because the future generations will be repaying the borrowing amount. The fiscal deficit it has a crowding out impact upon the private investment, and it further increases the inflation. So the government finances are also impacted. Third, it has an impact upon the society. So the social political arena is also in tension, because when there is inflation, the people demand more wages, and because of that they go into a strike, they have more demands, there are hartals, and there is tension between the employer and employee, which ultimately disturbs the entire social political harmony, right? So this is the one part. Then coming to the second, that is upon the redistribution of income. So redistribution of income means when the income is shifting from one group of people to another group of people. So the first major adverse impact is that this inflation reduces the purchasing power of currency, and because of that the people who are poor, whose per capita income is less, they suffer the most. So suppose there are two people, one is the poor person and another is the rich person. The poor person is having total income of 10,000 rupees per month, and the rich person is having 10 lakh rupees per month. The poor person is spending 8,000 rupees on the day-to-day necessities, and the rich person is spending 80,000 rupees on day-to-day spending. If we see overall, the poor person is spending 80% of its income, and the rich person is spending only 8% of its income. So when poor person is spending 80% of its income and the the currency is having less purchasing power, that means majority of the income of the poor person will be buying the minimum goods. However, in case of rich, only 8% is being spent. The 92% is safe with the person. So only 8% is having the impact of inflation. Rest of the amount does not have the direct impact of the inflation. So this decreases the standard of living of the poor people and it increases the inequality, because it is the poor people who are highly impacted as compared to the rich people, right? So that is why we call that this inflation is regressive in nature, and some people also call that this inflation is nothing but unlegislated tax. So this is also called as unlegislated tax. What is the meaning of unlegislated tax? It means that there is no government law, it is not passed by the parliament, but still an invisible tax is being paid by the poor people. So there is something which eats away the income of the people despite the government not collecting directly any money from them. That is why this is called unlegislated tax, right? Second, the impact upon the producer and the consumer. Producer versus the consumer. So who will benefit? Is it the producer or the consumer? So definitely it is the producer who will gain, because the producer will get more amount of money for the same product. When prices are rising, the sales price will be more, and for the buyer the purchase price will be high. So for the buyer it will be a loss. Then coming to the impact on the debtor versus the creditor. So what is the meaning of debtor and creditor? So debtor is basically the person who is borrower. So and creditor is the person who is lender, or the person who is giving the money to another person on loan. So creditor can be, for example, the State Bank of India, and borrower can be, for example, Mr. Ram. So when Reserve Bank of India, when SBI, the State Bank of India, is giving the loan to Mr. Ram, for example, rupees 100, and it is given at the rate of 5% interest rate. So at the end of year, Ram will return back rupees 105. However, in this case, when the inflation rate is 10%, when the rate of inflation is 10%, then this 105 will not be able to buy any product which is costing 110. So for example, at the time of giving the loan, State Bank of India could have bought 1 kilogram of apple which were costing 100 rupees at that time. Now 1 kilogram of apple are costing 110 because there is inflation of 10%. So now State Bank of India cannot buy 1 kilogram of apple which are costing 110 from 105 which the State Bank of India has received from Mr. Ram. Are you getting my point? So who is loser? The loser is State Bank of India. So the person who is giving the loan will be the loser as compared to the person who is getting the loan. Then flexible income person versus fixed income person. So if the person is having flexible income, that means the self-employed people, businessmen, or the government employees, or the people who are working in the established private sector. So their income is inflation adjusted. When the inflation is there, their income is also increasing. So they don't have any impact. But the person who is having a fixed income, for example, the daily wage earner. So when daily wage earner does not have any inflation protection, so their purchasing power is reduced and they are adversely impacted. So the flexible income income earning people, they are not impacted, but the fixed income earning people, they are impacted. Then next is the bond holder or debt holder. So the bond holder or debt holder are those people who have purchased some kind of debenture, bond, or some instrument which is giving them the fixed income, for example interest. So they will be protected from the inflation only and only when their interest is linked to the inflation or their interest is more than the rate of inflation. Otherwise they will be in loss. So if the rate of inflation is 10% and they are getting the interest of 15%, then they will be in profit. Otherwise they will be in loss. That is why the government has introduced the concept of inflation indexed bonds, so that the people who are investing into the bonds, they can be protected from the adverse impacts of inflation, right? So this is the another impact. What is the impact upon the production and consumption? So production, in the long term, it is adversely impacted. There is reduction in the production. Why? Because if the inflation remains high for the long time, the people stop buying because the purchasing power of the people is reduced. And when the people stop buying, then the production is also less because there is no incentive to produce more. Then it has an impact upon certain sectors. So certain sectors will have benefit and other sectors will get lose. For example, if the prices of real estate property are increasing, the people will invest more into the real estate as compared to the general production. So the investment will shift from other sectors to the real estate sector. Third impact is that even quantitative production is reduced. Why? Because when the prices are increasing, when the inflation is there, the producer is producing a packaged item. So for example, we take the example of Parle-G biscuit. Earlier in ₹4, the Parle-G biscuit packet was very big. Now this packet is becoming small and small. They are maintaining the same price so that their customer do not face the direct impact. However, they are reducing the quantity. Why they are reducing the quantity? Because of inflation. Because of inflation over the decades. So overall quantity of production is decreasing. So these are the various impacts of the inflation. So let us do a quick recap of the entire discussion. So on the positive side, it encourages the spending, it increases the production, increases the economic growth, and it leads to decrease in the unemployment, and the people who are owners of the property, they are happy. Negative part, on the different sector, on the external sector, exports are decreasing, imports are increasing, there is depreciation in the value of rupee, and the government revenue deficit, fiscal deficit are increasing, social political tensions are there. On the production is decreasing, certain sectors are having the adverse impact, and the ultimate quantity is decreasing. Redistribution of income, purchasing power of the people is decreasing, inequality is increasing, it is regressive tax, unlegislated tax. Then producer versus consumer, debtor versus creditor, creditor will lose, debtor will gain. Flexible income versus fixed income, and the fixed income earning bondholders. So these are the different stakeholders and they are having the impact. So with this I complete this session, and in the next lecture I will discuss how to control the inflation. Thank you very much.